Christ is risen, and he is risen indeed. This Easter, let us encounter the risen Jesus Christ through the five sensory organs that God has given to us, through the sense of smell, sense of sight, sense of hearing, sense of taste, and sense of touch. We encounter the risen Jesus Christ through smell. The woman brought in the spices to anoint the body of Jesus. And early in the morning on Sunday, Mary Magdalene, Mary, mother of Jesus, and Salome bought some spices to anoint the body of Jesus, who they thought was in the tomb. They brought the best spices, which has an aromatic perfume smell. But when they reached the tomb of Jesus, in which he was buried, they were startled to see the stone being rolled away and the tomb of Jesus was empty. The perfume of the empty tomb was more aromatic than the spices they brought. The Gospel writer of John says that now there was a garden in the place where Jesus was crucified, and as in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had yet been laid. These women were the first ones to sense the strength of the risen Jesus through the sense of smell, the sweet perfume of the empty grave of Jesus in that garden. Jesus is risen, and we know it through our sense of smell. Nextly, we encounter the risen Jesus Christ through the sense of sight. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome bought some spices so they might go to anoint Jesus' body. And very early on the first day of the week, just after sunrise, they were on the way to the tomb. And on their way, these women asked each other, "Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb?" But when they looked up, and when they reached the tomb, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in white robes sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. The sight of the rolling stone helped these women at that tomb to sense and encounter the risen Jesus Christ. So, through the gift of sense of sight, we encounter the risen Jesus Christ. Thirdly, the sense of hearing. At the tomb, Mary's name was being called by the risen Jesus Christ. Mary went and informed the men disciples that the tomb was empty. They came in to look to themselves that the grave of Jesus was empty. And in that desperation, Mary stood at the grave of Jesus in that garden, weeping for someone, weeping that someone has taken the body of Jesus Christ. And on finding a person in that garden, Mary assumed that it was the gardener and asked him if he has taken the body of Jesus. And she said, "Please let me know so that I can go and bring him." Mary was weeping. And now the risen Jesus, who Mary mistook for a gardener, called out and called her Mary. And at once she turned to him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means the teacher. Mary, through this sense of hearing, sensed the risen Jesus Christ and the message of resurrection, so that she went on and proclaimed the gospel of resurrection to the entire world. Through the sense of hearing, we encounter the risen Jesus Christ. Fourthly, through the sense of taste. And on breaking the bread and receiving it, we knew it was Jesus. On the road to Emmaus, two disciples who were afraid of the events at Jerusalem were returning home and met the risen Jesus Christ, who came to them as a stranger to be their companion. This stranger risen Jesus Christ offered hope, opened the scriptures, explained the events of Word becoming flesh in Jesus. And when it was getting late in the night, these two disciples requested the stranger risen Jesus to stay with them in their village. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. And suddenly their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and Jesus disappeared from their sight. And these two disciples, on tasting this broken bread, asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? On tasting the broken bread with the risen Jesus, they recognized the risen Jesus in the stranger. With that sense of taste, the disciples recognized and encountered the risen Jesus Christ. Finally, the sense of touch. On touching the nail pierced hands of Jesus, Thomas believed in the risen Jesus Christ. The risen Jesus appeared to the frightened disciples and shared peace with them in their locked door experience. And now Thomas, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were put, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were in the house again, and Thomas was with them. Though the doors were locked, Jesus came and stood among them and said again, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put in my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas immediately said to the risen Jesus Christ, "My Lord and my God." And Thomas sensed the risen Jesus Christ with the sense of touch. So, this Easter, the call for us is to encounter, to recognize, and to know that Jesus is risen, and he is risen indeed, so that he is offering new life, new hope, and courage to all of us, so that we can go out into this world and be the channels of life, promoting love, sharing love, and see to it that all of us can live life in all its fullness, which has been granted to us by Jesus Christ. May the peace of Easter, may the peace of the risen Jesus Christ go with you, so that all of us can transform and renew this world. A happy Easter to us.
Sensing God by cleansing our hearts, dancing out by clearing our paths, sharing love by sharing our life, feeling God in all of our lives. For we walk like Christ, for we talk like Christ, for we see like Christ, for we hear like Christ, for we touch like Christ, and will live like Christ. Let the world see in us a living God. Let the world hear Christ's victory of cross. Let your kingdom come into our world. Let the world transform to a better world. For we walk like Christ, for we talk like Christ, for we see like Christ, for we hear like Christ, for we touch like Christ, and will live like Christ. Sensing God by cleansing our hearts, dancing out by clearing our paths, sharing love by sharing our life, feeling God in all of our lives. For we walk like Christ, for we talk like Christ, for we see like Christ, for we hear like Christ, for we touch like Christ, and will live like Christ.